Victory lap. President Trump praised for his decisive action against Iran as he meets with NATO leaders in the Netherlands. Plus, the latest on Karmelo Anthony, the Texas teen accused of murdering 17-year-old football star Austin Metcalf. And booted by Bezos, the Amazon founder's big Italian wedding is underway, but it is not happily ever after for some regular Joes trying to enjoy la dolce vita. Those stories and more today, Wednesday, June 25th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. President Trump is in the Netherlands meeting with NATO leaders as we speak. The first topic of conversation likely to be the Iran-Israel ceasefire. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's sometimes called the Trump whisperer, commended the commander-in-chief, writing him a note that said in part, "Congratulations and thank you for your decisive action in Iran. It makes us all safer." Speaking of that ceasefire, it seemed to be holding Tuesday night after a tense start. Shortly before it went into effect, both countries launched some last-gasp weapons at one another. Israel's strike killed a key scientist who they claim was behind what's left of Iran's nuclear program. Now, that's at least the 14th such specialist eliminated by Israel since the attacks began earlier this month. And Iran defended its launch, claiming that it came before the clock started on the ceasefire. And since then, tensions do appear to have simmered down. President Trump, who lashed out at both countries for the continued fighting, said that he was not seeking regime change in Iran, which seems to be a shift in his position on that topic from earlier in the week. And now some updates on two stories we've been watching. Karmelo Anthony, the Texas teen accused in the horrific stabbing death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, has officially been charged with first-degree murder. Now, if convicted, he could face life in prison. Anthony claims that the killing happened in self-defense after the two high schoolers got into an argument over a seat at a track meet. Now, a judge released the teen on a $250,000 bond after his arrest, and that decision sparked outrage. People were furious he was seemingly able to live it up with his family inside of their fancy home while being accused of murder. And in Washington state, officials are still looking for Travis Decker, the 32-year-old dad suspected of murdering his three young daughters and then leaving their bodies in a remote campground. Now, authorities initially believed that Travis was alive, able to survive off the grid. But after nearly a month of searching, investigators think he too could be dead, and they've called in cadaver dogs to help find his body. But as the search continues, it's worth noting this. In the days before the murders, Decker reportedly Googled how to relocate to Canada and Canada jobs. Moving on to some tech news. We have all heard that AI is coming for your job, and it's doing it again, but not in the way that you would expect. A new study revealed that popular large language models, think ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, have a significant demographic bias when it comes to job hunting. Now, companies have been using AI to weed through pools of resumes in order to narrow down top job candidates, making hiring easier. But this study found that the bots are filtering out white males at a higher rate. The data showed interview rates were 12% higher for Black candidates versus white candidates and female candidates over male candidates. Good news, though, for all you white bros out there. Researchers were able to change the bot's code to reduce bias to under 1%. Maybe this is a lesson that humans should be choosing humans to do human jobs, but there's bias there too. Now to our big story, the big, beautiful bill. You probably forgot about it, what with the threat of nuclear war the past few days. Well, it's still a big, beautiful thing. One person who has definitely not forgotten about it, President Trump. He posted online Tuesday, quote, "To my friends in the Senate, lock yourself in a room if you must. Don't go home and get the deal done this week. And no one goes on vacation until it's done." Now, the bill is currently making its way through the Senate, having already passed the House. But once it's tweaked to the Senate's liking, it has to go back to the House and be passed again, and round and round and round we go. So to help us make sense of all of this, I'm joined by the Post politics reporter Ryan King. Ryan, what exactly has to happen to get this bill passed in both chambers here? I mean, what kind of timeline is Congress working with?
Well, Republicans have a lot of work ahead of them, and they are trying to get this across the finish line by the 4th of July, which is looking like an increasingly ambitious timeline to get this done. President Trump has told Republicans that he doesn't want them to break for recess for the 4th of July until this is done. And he basically said that they should just lock themselves in a room and get this done. But right now they have a lot of big differences that they need to work out. and they need to finish finalizing the text for this. Then once the Senate votes on it, and if they successfully advance it, then it's going to have to go back to the House, and then it will go to Trump's desk to get his signature.
Now, not everyone agrees that the big, beautiful bill is beautiful, but it is most certainly big. What are some of the largest sticking points that are in the way of moving this forward?
Yeah, well, it is a really massive piece of legislation, and it's intended to be the signature achievement of President Trump during his first year in his second term, his signature legislative achievement. And it basically includes, of course, tax cuts, spending cuts, border security spending, additional defense spending, and a whole bunch of conservative wish list items. But for the sticking points, there are a group of fiscal hawks in the Senate and in the House as well that feel that this bill doesn't adequately address the debt, and that this could potentially increase the deficit by too much for them to tolerate. So they have to deal with those deficit concerns. Then there is a faction of senators and even some lawmakers in the House that are uneasy about the Medicaid reforms in this bill. There are concerns that it's just basically cutting too much from Medicaid spending. Then there are a bunch of other technical issues. The Senate's official rulemaker, the Senate parliamentarian, has to go through this whole thing, and she's been spiking some key provisions here, which has really annoyed some of the Republican senators and some lawmakers in the House as well. And then additionally, another really big sticking point between the two chambers is the SALT provision. The House had labored over this for months, and they came to a kind of deal on how much to increase the SALT deduction. They decided to increase it to $40,000 up from $10,000. The Senate Finance Committee took a look at this and basically threw away that increase for now, which they're saying is like kind of a negotiating tactic. But there are some lawmakers in the House, Republicans, particularly from New York, that have said that that's a deal breaker, that any changes to the House deal means that they'll vote against it.
Sounds so simple when you put it like that. I mean, honestly, when you lay it out, it is such an uphill battle. But one thing you said that I loved is when you talked about it being the signature achievement of the first year of the second term. I want to go back to his first term. The signature domestic accomplishment of President Trump's first term were his tax cuts. And he wants this big, beautiful bill to make them permanent. What is the latest on that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that they're waiting for is a few more rulings from the Senate parliamentarian to see if their effort to make the tax cuts permanent passes the Senate rules, if it's compliant with the Senate rules. Senate Republicans have also worked to try to make some of the business tax cuts permanent. Like when the House did its version, there were a few business tax cuts that expired after about 5 years or so. And so there were a lot of Senate Republicans that wanted to make that permanent. But then there's been a bit of a sticking point because there is another group of Senate Republicans that wanted to go lighter on cutting back on the Biden era tax breaks for green energy companies, which is considered a deal breaker in the House. And so because of that, they have issues where it could increase the deficit by too much to potentially comply with some of the Senate rules. So right now, it's kind of wait and see. They're trying to make as much of Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent as possible. And they're also trying to expand on it by trying to enact no tax on tips and no tax on overtime pay.
How you keep all of that straight in your head, I will never understand. But thank you so much, Ryan King, for breaking that all down for us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And now from our friends at Page Six, A-listers are rolling into Venice for the wedding of the year between Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. First daughter Ivanka Trump and her family were spotted boarding a small boat in one of the famous canals. But it is not about the water taxis or the gondolas this week. No. With the billionaire bride and groom in town, it's all about the yachts. The floating city is being swarmed with super yachts belonging to some of Bezos's super rich friends. Michael Jordan pulled up in his $115 million yacht. which pales in comparison to the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who docked his $360 million yacht close by. Now, insiders in Venice tell Page Six that the couple has booked multiple venues across multiple days, which is essentially done to throw off local protesters. And the regular Joes, or I guess the Giuseppes in this case, who were already booked at those swanky properties, are getting the boot as a result. I can't imagine why the local plebes are pissed over the wedding. A real man of the people, that Jeff Bezos. And finally today, President Trump dropping bombs. F-bombs, that is. Here's the president speaking with reporters Tuesday discussing the tenuous ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Well, I understood that. The president's R-rated rant is kind of rare for U.S. presidents historically, but maybe not so rare for this one. Here he is as a candidate in 2023 at a speech to the California GOP convention.
He's beating you by 10, 15, or 20 points like we're doing with crooked Joe Biden. Let's indict the motherfucker. Let's indict him.
Now, in all fairness, a presidential potty mouth is one of the uncommon traits that crosses party lines. President Obama, President Biden, and President George W. Bush have all dropped a public expletive or two. And to that I say, whatever floats your boat. That's it for today. For more on these stories and everything else you could possibly want to know, check out the New York Post in print or online. And don't forget, like and subscribe to the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, on YouTube. You will be glad you did. I'll be here. I want to start my day with you.